Okay, so Sarah, it's lovely to welcome you this afternoon to talk to us during Absent Friends Week about people with dementia and people dying in their own homes with dementia. So, for the sake of other people watching in, I'd like to welcome Sarah Burnard, who's Chief Executive of a national charity called Hope for Home. So, first and foremost, Sarah, can you tell us a wee bit about how Hope for Home came into being?
Yes, thank you, Linda. I'd like to just acknowledge also that Linda is one of our trustees, so we feel very privileged to have Linda as part of our team. Hope for Home was born about 12 years ago, and it was born out of the fact that I looked after my mother, who had dementia, at home until she died. And I adored her, so it was an utter privilege to do so. She lived and died in the home that she'd lived in for many years, and she died at the age of 92. Um, and I am very privileged because I have a long background in healthcare. So when I was caring for her, I did understand quite a lot about how the health services and social services worked, etc. But nevertheless, there were times when it was somewhat challenging. And so I vowed after she had died that I would try to do something to help other people who might find themselves in the circumstances that I suddenly found myself in.
Thank you, Sarah. And I should point out that people might hear in the recording, we can hear your lovely budgies in the background. So
Miss
there is.
Buttercup, actually, sorry.
Very good. So, what does Hope for Home do?
So Hope for Home is a registered charity, and we have two main objects. The first is to provide support for unpaid carers of people looking after their loved ones at home, in their family home, with dementia. And the second object is that we have a brief for public education. So those are the two main things we do.
Super. What do you not do?
We do not provide, it's very important to say this because a lot of people immediately come to us for this. We do not provide carers for people at home.
And it's a big remit, isn't it, what you're saying that you actually do? So tell us a bit about how Hope for Home has met its aims and objectives. What kind of things have you done as a charity?
Well, the first thing we did was to build a website, and on that website we have lots of information for people who are caring for their loved one at home, about where to get help, how to get it, the sorts of things to think about. So that's a sort of information resource and a sort of signposting resource, really. But we are entirely dependent on donations for our work. So we rely on people giving us money, and then when we have amassed enough money, we launch on particular projects. And so we've done a number of projects over the past 11, 12 years. I suppose, and people can read about those on our website, but one of our most influential ones, I think, was in partnership with St Joseph's Hospice in London in the East End, where we funded a project for 2 years whereby volunteers were trained to in a technique called Namaste, which is a technique that has been developed by a lady called Professor Joyce Simard in the States for people with dementia. And it involves lots of different things, for example, reminiscence and aromatherapy and hand massage, a sort of holistic approach. So we funded a post, and that post holder trained a number of volunteers to visit people, and in this project it was people with advanced dementia in their own home, to teach their carers how to do this technique. And nobody has ever done that before, as far as we know, in the world. It's done in care homes, but never in people's own homes. And it was so successful that funding was released by St James's Place, another charity, and it has been replicated across the UK and is particularly extensive in the East End. Actually, it's extended quite far. So from a relatively tiny project, great things have come about. And so those are the sorts of projects that we do. We're very taken by that success, because for these people, this was in the London Borough of Newham, there was nothing for these people, nothing, no help really. And we had the project evaluated, and it got great evaluations, so we were very thrilled about that. So that's just one example of something we do.
So, Sarah, for people that don't know anything about Namaste, what have been the positive impacts on people and families that have experienced it? So, what kind of things do you expect to see because somebody's had Namaste?
Yes. So I'll give you just one example. There are many, many I could talk about, that, but there is one example with a lovely gentleman called John. And John had advanced dementia, cared for by his wife. And for many years, he had sat in a chair in the corner at home and not communicated at all. And the volunteer who we matched with him found out a number of things about him. One was that in his youth, he was very keen on reggae, and he used to love to dance and sing. And he and his wife used to go out to various venues to do that. And when he did that, he wore his special black leather jacket, which was still in the house. So the volunteer started playing him recordings of reggae and singing with him. And it was, I have to say, it was miraculous to watch that within a week of her doing that, he was standing up with his jacket on and not dancing independently, because he wasn't incredibly steady on his feet, but dancing with her and singing reggae with her. And it opened up a completely new life for him. And his wife was completely overjoyed. And of course, she liked reggae too. So they spent a lot of time singing and enjoying reggae. But it was a complete transformation for this particular gentleman. Lots of other examples of that too, but that was just one.
And I think I remember an example of some very young people being trained in Namaste.
Yes, yes. So we had another elderly gentleman who had dementia, and in the house, it was a multi-generational house. So there was his daughter and son-in-law and 3 children, aged 12, 9, and 7, I think, and they absolutely adored him. And so the volunteer taught the techniques to the daughter and son-in-law, but also the children. So the children were able to do some hand massage, aromatherapy, and very safely, obviously. And they were overjoyed because he responded to that in a way that he hadn't responded for years, and they felt a connection with him. So it was a very moving experience for the whole family, and then they were able to carry that on, of course.
That's a tremendous example, isn't it, of making a difference in
Yeah,
a circumstance where inevitably our focus is on care and services and managing medications and all sorts of things. But it sounds like in the midst of that, Hope for Home has done something about the wider quality of life experience for people in that situation.
Yes, I mean, we evaluated that project very carefully as we went along because it was so new. And the resounding results were that in every occasion, the carer felt hugely supported, their quality of life had improved, and because they felt that um, their loved one was um, responding in such a positive way, that gave them huge joy. So it was really a great project, and it continues today, and as I say, has expanded elsewhere throughout the UK. So we're
Super.
very thrilled about it.
It's a really good example of what Hope for Home does. In terms of the kind of your experience, it's 12 years now since you began. What are the kind of things that you've reflected on and understood from watching so many families that have somebody they love living with them at home and trying to keep them at home to die in their own homes with
Yes,
dementia?
I think that what I would say is that, and from my own experience, it is possible to do this. Um, it's not for everybody, I should say that,
Yeah.
but it is possible. And we have many, many examples of people living in tiny little 1-bedroom flats or bigger houses, people who are very elderly themselves in their 80s and 90s, caring, for example. So housing conditions obviously have a bearing, but they're not necessarily the deal breaker, really. Um, and I think the most important thing is that people get support to do it and find the support. And I suppose what we're trying to do is to offer more choice for these people, because very often the choice is very limited. In Newham, obviously people had access to GPs and all the primary care services, but actually on a day-to-day basis there was very, very little for people with advanced dementia. And we know that carers, unpaid carers, there are thousands of people doing this. We know it's very isolating, and we know that they're very dedicated because they love the person that they're caring for. These people are very hidden. At the time we're recording this, Linda, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so they're even more hidden now. And that makes our work even more challenging, really, because normally we would ask people to go into their household. Obviously, we can't do that at the moment. So we're having to think of innovative ways of achieving that. And very sadly, in the pandemic, we do know that this is what month we're in, the end of October. We do know that 1 in 4 people who die of COVID-19 have dementia, and that's a pretty stark statistic, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. Sarah, Hope for Home has got much to offer and it's certainly got no end of need to respond to. If
Mm.
people wanted to get in touch to find out more about Hope for Home,
Mm.
or perhaps they've got an idea for a project that
Yeah,
they'd like to share with
yeah.
you, how would they do that?
The best way is via the website, and that you can see the sort of work we do. You can email us, you can phone us. If you phone, you get me. Eventually, I will answer messages. That's the best way, and we're always interested to hear about new projects and innovative things that people can come up with. And I think this is a time, I don't know whether you would agree with Linda, but actually, although it's very constraining, this ghastly pandemic, it is a time for innovation.
It is. It most certainly is. Sarah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Pleasure.